Avner, before we dig in and get specific, I want to zoom out. From your definition, what is sales enablement?
That's a beautiful question. And I think that given the economic situation today where everyone tries to do more with less, sales enablement becomes more important and productive for a business. So in order to answer that question, I'll say if you watch the movie Moneyball, sales enablement is Jonah Hill for the revenue leaders. So it's about, being the glue that cements together all the different supporting teams that help revenue leaders to move forward and effectively, but also someone who spends time in the trenches, someone who takes active part in the selling motion and being able to provide real-time actionable insights, moving away from reactive to proactive selling motion. That's a long story short.
In your experience, do you find most companies have a sales enablement function, or is it sort of something that just happens?
I think it depends on the size of the business. From an early stage or startup point of view, it's not a function. It's a person. It's an individual, sometimes acting as a function, but in most cases, it's a one-man show, dealing with all the different jobs to be done from enablement point of view. If we're talking about a mature business, enterprise, or corporate businesses, then it's definitely a function which has different roles and responsibilities, from content management to coordinating events and pushing content to sellers, providing feedback to the other teams such as marketing, etc.
What do you find the best companies are doing right now as it relates to sales enablement?
I think that most of the companies that I'm dealing with or in touch with realize that they need to move away from managing content, which is just another flavor of product marketing or training, to something that is more proactive. More and more businesses consider sales enablement as the sensor that provides them with actionable insights, whether the go-to-market is the teams are executing on the expected go-to-market playbooks, whether we have a problem of messaging or whatever, whether we see some performance hiccups, but we're not able to explain those hiccups just because of traditional reports on CRM. So more and more businesses realize that sales enablement is more than just content. It's more than just coordinating your events. It's about taking proactive part in the selling motion.
How do those companies then pivot from understanding that it's not just content, it is a proactive effort? Where is the training or where does the work come in to actually take it to the next level or take it to the level, as you're alluding to, that it should be at?
So what triggered that trend, what triggered that recognition is the fact that most businesses, startups and even mature businesses, basically are under an increased pressure coming, from top to bottom, from investors, from C-levels, from board of directors, to basically do more with less and see faster results, faster outcome. Most businesses, regardless of size and, agnostic to the industry or sector, they have a shorter runway to success. In the past, like a couple of years ago, most businesses could actually, tolerate those long trial and errors, long time to value or outcome. Onboarding could have taken a quarter, even 2 quarters. Reps had a very long grace time to time to proficiency. And today, because everyone is so focused on seeing results faster, we have less money to invest in campaigns. It's harder to hire people. It's harder to keep them engaged and stick around. So the entire business, the entire go-to-market is trying to optimize processes, even content. And this is where sales enablement needs to step in and take an active part in the process of optimization or identifying what works, what doesn't work.
Isn't that contradictory though? So if we want to shorten the sales cycle, don't we need to put more emphasis on sales enablement, more emphasis on content, more emphasis on nurturing the sales relationship and helping the sales team? It sounds like leaders should be spending more on this part of the organization, not necessarily less.
That's a beautiful question. So based on my experience globally, from working with companies in the US, Europe, and, in the Middle East, um, I think it comes down to the definition and understanding of what is sales enablement. And again, based on my experience, most revenue leaders got it all wrong. They don't really understand the potential of sales enablement. They don't fully understand the rules of engagement or what are the jobs to be done. And what happens in reality is sales enablement just fall into that, common pitfall of acting or serving as another flavor of product marketing, which is creating content or moderating content. In practice, what happens, sales enablement, from a seller point of view, it feels like another content creator, which nobody likes, nobody wants, nobody can actually tolerate, nobody can actually deal with more content. I think that the revenue reps, sales development, even customer success, they have too much content to deal with and they need to show faster results. And when sales enablement fall into that common pitfall, that rabbit hole of let's create content, let's solve a problem with another playbook, let's work again on that playbook, it doesn't help anyone. In my opinion, again, seeing this from the bird's eye view, when someone relies on content, it feels like it's their comfort zone because it's the easiest thing to do, especially when you have chat, AI.
Right.
Okay. What needs to happen is there are enough, in my opinion, there are enough content creators in the organization. You don't need another person to create content. What you need is someone to explain how reps are consuming the content and whether the content really helps the execution or not.
I think that's important, right? So I think that is actually a really good point that you hit on there is no one needs more content. We need the right content. We need to be able to digest the content. And throughout the sales process, we need to be able to regurgitate the content to our prospects. Having too much content is almost like not having any in the first place, right? I see that firsthand, right? So this is our probably 40th episode of this show. We have another 170 episodes on the other show. Not to mention all of the ebooks and blog articles and white papers and how-tos that Haley Marketing has put together. So we have an outrageous amount of content, all of which helps our team, helps our sales reps, helps our industry. But I know firsthand what you're speaking to. When I need to find an answer to something and I need to dig through the catalog, it could be a challenge for sure. So I think you're spot on with that. Having a lot of content, while it can be helpful, the sales team and your sales reps need to know how to leverage it, how to use it, need to be able to actually articulate that to the prospect, because at the end of the day, that's what matters most.
Exactly. And what happens in reality, when you realize that you need that part, that component in the puzzle, so you either create content or you just basically push the responsibility to the reps. Guys, this is the new content. These are the new playbooks. So find the time to practice, to brush up, to catch up, to review that latest content, and we expect to see some, improvement in your upcoming calls. That's a reactive approach. That's not what sales enablement needs to do. In my opinion, and I've been doing that, quite enough. What needs to happen instead is you need to actually get everyone together. You need to go through the content. You need to show them where the content is in order to help them find that content, when the need arises. What works best is practicing together. And that's, I think, one of the critical areas that most businesses, from small, medium businesses to mature businesses, they fail. This is like a very common pitfall. This is like the biggest challenge for leaders and for any other decision makers, that they don't build an ecosystem that allows reps to practice. And even worse, reps don't get any feedback. The only feedback they get is on those forecasting meetings, or, someone, slaps them on the hand or snaps them on the head, whatever the expression is, sorry. When it's too late. And in most cases, it feels like you're diagnosing a problem which happened in the past and you're not providing them with real-time feedback, or bottom line, you're not providing them with, user-friendly ecosystem that allows them to improve in time with someone who can actually provide them real feedback and not just, pushing the responsibility on the reps to do it on their own, because they won't do it.
It's interesting. The feedback loop in sales is essentially, did you get the close or did you not? Exactly. Which could be let's say it's a 60-day or a 90-day sales cycle, right? So within that 60 to 90-day cycle, though, you have touch points with that prospect. You have phone calls, you have emails, whatever it might be in your sales system, right? You have all of these touch points. I like where you're going with that is the feedback loop, though, is did you close? Did you not? It's yes or no, but there's no feedback throughout the process. There's no training, no coaching throughout the process to say, hey, we may have landed on yes, should this call gone this way?
Exactly.
And because of no role practice, because we're not coaching our sales reps throughout the process, it's just, did you get the order? No, your sales are down, and there's no coaching throughout the whole shift. Avner, how do you propose staffing firms start to leverage role practice within their organizations? How should that be done? Where do you see the best companies getting started with that?
So I think that role plays is not just a sales game. I think that everyone needs to practice role playing, and staffing is specifically. And I'll share my own experience. In one of my previous jobs, we tried to fill in the gaps and hire people, find talents and hire them. Yeah. It was a very challenging task. We couldn't find talents. And when we did, they signed a contract, but they never showed up. They ghosted us. And I was actually leading sales enablement and revenue operations. And I was trying to help the other revenue leaders, sales dev and sales and CS to find the right people. And again, we were not able to do that. We were behind quota, behind numbers. And in order to find out, why, to find those answers to those whys, why aren't we able to find people and get them onboarded, etc. What I did is I actually, relocated to the recruitment space and spent most of my time with the recruiters in order to hear firsthand what works, what doesn't work. And I was amazed with the findings. To begin with, staffing recruiters or those that actually interview the applicants, the applicants were asking the wrong questions. But there was even a bigger problem, more than just asking questions. They were not fully aware of, what is it that we do. So they could not actually answer questions. So if an applicant, someone were asking questions about, the company, what is it that you do? What makes you different? Why should I actually join you when I have other options available? The staffing people actually could not answer those questions. So what I did, I actually built a playbook that provided them with the information they needed on the company, provided them with the background information on, competitive, what do we do better, differentiators. Same thing I do with sellers, but this time I was mainly focused on the staffing team. And not only that I provided them with the playbooks, because you can't just rely on someone to read and, practice and become proficient. You actually have to see those signals that you're making progress. So after creating those playbooks, how to hire, interview, and recruit and onboard, I actually spent some time simulating the scenario with the staffing team. And we did a few simulations. And then I built role plays, and I told them basically what you need to do. You need to start your day, every morning, with 30 minutes practice. Same thing you do, like you go to a gym, start practicing what you're about to do, your daily jobs. And that improved our staffing. Not only that, what's even more important than filling the gaps in staffing is making sure that those people that you hire stick around. So that created the first entry level, foot in the door, with better chances of, getting the people stick around longer.
Hey, it's Brad taking a short break to tell you about my friends over at Tricom. What if your back office fueled your growth instead of holding it back? Tricom makes it happen. From payroll and billing to accounting and asset-based lending, Tricom clears the roadblocks, empowers your path forward. Your team gets paid, your cash flow stays steady, and your business scales like never before. Tricom doesn't just support you, they set you up to soar. To learn more about my friends over at Tricom, visit tricom.com. That's TRICOM.com. All right, let's get back to the show. We know we need role play. We know we need role practice. Why don't leaders do it more? Why don't they do what you did in your situation? Why is it this understanding that, yes, we need this, but the number one thing we don't do?
That's a great question. And I think there are at least three answers or three reasons. One, which I hate to admit, but it's a fact. Leaders remember those days where they actually were reps. They hated role playing. So as a leader, they don't believe in role plays. And I'm saying this, firsthand as we speak. So if a leader doesn't believe in role playing, there's no chance you can actually get it, worked. Or you can't deploy something that a leader who is your sponsor believes in. So that's reason number one. Leaders don't believe in role plays, some of them. The second reason is they don't know what they don't know. And maybe they think that deploying this process, building that system might require money, investment, infrastructure they can't, afford, for many reasons, time, money, people, etc. And the reality is completely the opposite. Let's put aside ChatGPT or any other, AI tool like Claude, whatever. Let's just stick to the basics. It happens to be that I'm, as we speak, conducting some evaluation to the top AI applications. You've got plenty of variety, plenty of tools to choose from, starting from $15K a year to whatever you can afford. So it's a no-brainer finding a solution that works for you. All you need to do is just, copy paste those LinkedIn profiles. That's it. Autopilot. The system does the work for you. Now, if you can't afford $15K, you can actually build it yourself. And that's exactly what I'm doing as we speak. I'm building an entire role play ecosystem using ChatGPT. So it's a one-time effort. Once you do that, that's it. Done.
Yeah. I've been using ChatGPT myself quite a bit. And I just recently, and kind of shame on me because I know it's been there for a while, just recently found the audio, section. I've unlocked the audio section of ChatGPT, and I put a lot of work into the show. And hopefully for the listeners that shows, but what I had done last weekend, not for this specific episode, actually I did too, but for another specific episode, I turned on the voice and I talked to ChatGPT while I was driving to get my haircut. And I just used it as a production assistant. Is this opening question strong enough? How can we refine it? What can we do differently? How do we make this punch a little bit better? And not only did it present me with a series of questions and avenues where I could take that specific interview, but then I said, okay, now critique me. I'm going to ask the questions, give me feedback, give me constructive criticism on how I am only working on this opening line. I put a lot of work into the first question of every single show. So how can we make sure it punches? How do we make sure it hits? How do I make sure I leave enough room for someone like yourself to take the question wherever they want to go so that once we're off and running, we're running? And I can't speak more highly of that functionality within ChatGPT. I feel like I've unlocked truly a production assistant for this show that I've never had access to before. But it's tailored in such a way that because I'm using my ChatGPT in the project folder that I have created, it knows me already. It knows the show already. It knows past guests. It has every transcript from past episodes. So it knows who I am at this point. So when I'm asking for constructive feedback on how I'm going to articulate the first question like I had today, it knows where I want to get to. And for me, that's perfect role practice, right? I might not, as a sales leader, be comfortable role playing in the office or having another conversation with another team member. So let's use the tools that we have at our disposal, or as Avner alluded to, find the tool that you can purchase that can help you down the road as well.
I agree. I think that, going back to what I said before, that, leaders don't know what they don't know. Maybe they take it for granted. Maybe they're not aware of the fact that in order to practice, in order for a leader to practice, it comes at the expense of something else that you need to do, strategic jobs. And leaders that, are effective and efficient, they're not, they can't actually, they don't have the capacity to practice with their reps. So they need a multiplier to do their job for them. So they can have a sales enablement guy, practice with their reps, or they can bring in a technology that does the work for them. Either way, practice and feedback is more than just important, given, again, the economic climate and the fact that we need to do more with less and faster. It's a necessity, in my opinion.
I like how you articulated it as your daily workout, right? So you might run every morning. You might go to the gym every morning. You might have the same diet every morning. We have routines as humans. We need to develop those work habits and those work routines as well. And I'm fearful in staffing and recruiting, we have developed poor routines. We've developed the wrong routines. We know, listen, the way the industry used to work, if we call 100 people this week, maybe we land one conversation. So, okay, I'll call 200 people and I'll land 2 conversations. That's not the same game that we need to be playing in 2025, certainly not 2026. So I like the thought of saying, okay, yes, we need to close orders now, but to do so, we also need to improve ourselves. We need to get better. And if we can role play, we can role practice, we can develop our skills and we can refine our skills. Well, then maybe our close rate goes from instead of 101 to 115. And now we're doing better, right? But we have to sort of hurry up and wait. We have to be proactive in our efforts. Otherwise, we're going to be talking about this forever. And the challenge isn't going to go away. It's going to get more difficult as buyers have more options and as they have more blinders on to people that are selling.
Exactly. And I think there are more areas that we as people or even leaders tend to either ignore or just look the other way, which is we invested tons of dollars in terms of money and time and effort in training everyone on a new sales methodology. Could be Challenger, Sandler, MedPick, MedDick, Value, whatever. It costs a lot of dollars. Could be like $1,000 per head. Bottom line is, let's say 100K. And that's a one-time workshop because you can't afford, an ongoing process. So you bring someone in and then they conduct this workshop and then you spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on a change management process. What do you do next? Are you crossing fingers or are you building a complementary system that checks, the pulse? And that's exactly what role plays does for you. It closes the loop and provides you real-time scoring mechanism that helps you to understand whether the investment proved itself or you have a problem.
Avner, you're describing to a T why we launched this show. So as I was flying out to a conference probably 2 years ago, I learned about the forgetting curve, which says 1 hour after learning new material, 50% is gone. 1 week after, 90% is gone. And I took an issue with that. We're spending thousands of dollars to fly our team members and other individuals throughout staffing and recruiting to conferences to learn, to mathematically know 1 week from now, they're going to forget 90% of what they learned and more. If we know how conferences go, people are at the bar, they're having drinks, whatever it might be, they're dipping out of sessions early. They're losing more of that information. So we fundamentally launched this show to bring conference caliber speakers and authors like yourself to the staffing and recruiting industry every other week to say, listen, even if you saw Avner at a conference, there's a good chance you already forgot 90% of what he said. So come back and listen to this episode to learn it again. It's the repetition though. It's the consistency that gets us going forward, not necessarily starting. And that's exactly how I try to live life. That's exactly the mentality that I try to have. It's easy to get started. It's easy to do something even in a weekly sprint, right? You alluded to the gym or you alluded to this morning routine of role practice. Anybody can go to the gym for a week. Show me the person who's gone every other day for 5 years, though. That's the person that I want to talk to. And I think sales reps, it's the exact same thing. What are you doing day after day after day to get better? Not necessarily, what's that one course you took last year? Because that's not going to do anything for us. That's going to get the ball rolling, but you need to make sure it keeps rolling.
Exactly. And I'd like to go back to your first question. What is sales enablement?
Please.
And that ties together to everything that we have discussed so far. Being in the sales enablement space for more than 15 years, helping, SMBs and enterprise businesses, I can tell you that the one thing that most businesses, and I would even argue, I would even say 90% of the businesses that I know and worked for, and even consultant to, they miss that specific component, that critical component, which is reinforcement. So they invest tons of dollars on content and people, but they forget that the most important part is reinforcement. Forecasting is not reinforcement. It's postmortem. That's not reinforcement. And again, you can accomplish reinforcement with role plays and other mechanisms and systems, but I think that role plays is the most productive and effective way to see whether you have a problem or not. Now, when you're staffing, it's even more important to to identify those early signals, because otherwise you're going to end up wasting more money.
Hey, it's Brad taking a short break to tell you about an offer exclusive to listeners of Take the Stage. 30 minutes of strategic marketing consultation with me, completely free. Hey, whether you're looking to drive more sales or more job applications, I want to help. Visit bit.ly/stage offer. Pick a time that works best for you. That's it. Again, whether you want to drive more applications or more job orders, I want to help. That's bit.ly/stage offer. All right, let's get back to the show.
Yeah, the reinforcement side of things is critical. And I'm sitting here trying to reflect on that for a second. And when I think about what the best staffing and recruiting firms do differently, it's consistency. It's reinforcement. It's knowing what got us here and knowing sort of that secret sauce that got us from 1 million to 10 million and continuing through that, saying, listen, this got us here. We're going to continue on that path. But it's also knowing that what got us here might not necessarily get us to 100 million, and being able to have the courage to look yourself in the mirror and say, yes, this worked to this point. Some of that we're going to keep, but some of that we're also going to change. But it's that consistency. It's that reinforcement that make and I guess break the best and worst staffing firms.
I couldn't agree more. And I think that, again, what most recruiters and staffing reps are tending to either discard or areas that they sort of like stumble at is understanding, recognizing the fact that not every seller is the same, or sellers have different skills. You might have like those that are very good at building relationships and are very good at selling to an enterprise. And then you've got those that are very good at selling to an SMB. They can't deal with, cycles longer than 90 days. They actually prefer those shorter cycles. And when you mismatch and when you put someone in front of the wrong, like in the wrong scenario, even though they were like top performers at their previous jobs, they stand no chance of succeeding in their current job because, there is a misplacement. So you have to consider those issues. And the only way to achieve that, is by training, enabling the staffing team, the recruiters and the interviewers, to really understand and distinguish between those nuances and, minor details that can make or break the business.
Yeah, it's an interesting challenge, right? So if you're training your team, and in my thought, most sales leaders come to be sales leaders because they were great at selling. So they get a promotion and they move into the next seat. Right now, yes, maybe some come in because they're hired to be a sales team leader, sales manager, but it takes a very different skill set to manage a sales team than it does to actually sell. And Avner, where I like that you're going is it's very difficult to train a team of sales reps if you have one way of doing things. And that could be why your staffing firm isn't getting to the next stage in its trajectory, because put simply, you don't have the right people in place to coach your other team members to get it to the place that you want it to be at.
By the way, from a sales enablement point of view, most people in my position would actually stick to the basics and fundamental jobs, which is sales training, if you're lucky to have the right person to do that, or, playbooks, adoption, looking at reports, reporting back to managers, how the team, were doing, etc. But in my opinion, from a sales enablement, from what sales enablement really is, the job starts earlier. You need to help the recruiters, the staffing, the hiring manager to find those early signals of a match. By asking the right questions, by actually taking part in the interviewing process, if you have the experience and the skills, you can find those early signals whether you're dealing with a shark or an orca whale, which I really love that analogy. That means you've got someone who's doing great in terms of a team member, or someone who's like working silos as a shark, can't hunt with others, doesn't cooperate with others. So if you ask the right question, you can actually find out very early in the process whether you're going to have a problem or not. On top of that, one of the most important areas to find out is whether the person you're talking to, putting aside, the selling skills, performance skills, is he coachable? Is he or she coachable or non-coachable? Because maybe the go-to-market, your product is very complex, and from a seller's point of view, you rely on other people in order to land the deal. Technical people, legal, compliance, whatever it is, whatever it takes. And if you're dealing with a non-coachable person, in most cases, again, based on my experience, that person is going to struggle to land a deal. And from a team's point of view, the entire team is not going to meet their quota. So finding out, coachability, if the word exists, I think it's extremely important, sometimes more important than finding out whether, that guy, that lady were, top achieving in our previous jobs or not.
Agree. I think coachability and having somebody on your team who is able to take feedback, who is able to take advice, who is able to listen to that and digest it and either run with it or improve upon it, it is certainly critical, right? When we think about selling right now, I've heard, and I actually love your take on this, I've heard it takes 3 times the work for half the results. And if you're in sales right now and you're up against those numbers, if you're not open to change and you're not open to coaching, 3 times the work is going to come at a huge, huge crash somewhere down the line. You're going to be incredibly burnt out. Your sales aren't going to be where it's at. And when you rely on commission, well, now we're crashing even harder. So we need to be coachable. We need to be able to adapt to change. We need to be able to look at the resources at our disposal, whether it's technology or AI or even just internal team members, whatever it might be. But yes, we absolutely need that sort of chemistry across our team.
I agree. And I think that more and more leaders today are trying to, let's put it this way, more and more leaders and businesses have a shorter runway, less tolerance to accept inefficiencies. And some leaders even set the expectations, up front. Like, I'm going to give you a grace time of 2 months, top, or even a quarter. That's it. And if I'm not seeing results, satisfying results, it's not going to work. So they said that I know it, firsthand from my own experience. Leaders just, they have less money, they can't raise money as before. They've got, a bigger pressure coming down from their investors and board of directors. So they don't want to deal with inefficiencies. And people that are not coachable, not open for feedback, and are not adapting themselves or adjusting to the go-to-market, to the product complexity, to what it takes in order to win together, I don't think it's going to work anymore. It doesn't work anymore.
Avner, before I give you the floor to share a little bit about yourself and share a little bit about your books, I want to ask you one very open-ended question. Because you're an expert in sales enablement, is there anything on your mind that we have not talked about on this show that you wish we talked about?
What kind of skills would you look for when you hire a sales enablement guy or a lady?
Okay. Tell us.
What's the ICP?
Yeah. Talk to us about that person.
I think it's agnostic, has nothing to do with the product, has nothing to do with the segment, SMB, enterprise, whatever. Given the evolution that we are experiencing today, digital evolution, the emerge of, AI tools, to begin with, what it takes is an analytical approach, especially someone who has BI experience. That's a great benefit. Someone who's not afraid to delve into the, the selling motion and take part in the selling motion. Someone who's proactive and creative, a problem solver. And the other way around, the previous type, reactive, layback, content creator, that doesn't work anymore. So if I were to grow my team and look for additional manpower, additional horsepower to my team, I would first look on, creativity, problem solving skills, because everything else can be taught. Sales experience, in my opinion, that's extremely important. Most sales enablement practitioners don't come from the sales space. They come from HR or training or learning and development space. I'm not saying that this is a gap they can't bridge. They need to bridge that gap. Most of them are not doing that because, again, they're comfortable with where they are today. But selling skills, sales experience is important. I think that it's quite common in the US. Moving from sales to sales enablement, that's a great advantage. But in other areas, other territories, other regions, it's not that common. So what I would recommend for anyone who's trying to build a sales enablement function or to hire a sales enablement person, look for creativity, problem-solving skills, analytical skills, and of course, someone who has some kind of correlation with sales. That's extremely important as well.
You mentioned the content creator doesn't work anymore. Why?
Because from a traditional point of view, creating content, that's a time-consuming task, putting aside AI tools. Creating presentations, researching, interviewing people, putting together a presentation, minimum time is 2 weeks. If you are the only person in the company that creates content, it might work. But again, most businesses have many content creators. Now, let's put in, let's actually consider AI. In a matter of like 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 15 minutes, you can create whatever you need. And it's going to be like, cutting edge results. So you shouldn't put your efforts there. But the biggest challenge with content, it's not just about creating the content. It's about consuming the content. And most businesses, I would even say 95% of businesses that I'm familiar with, end up having a graveyard of content, whether they use a CMS, LMS, Confluence, Gong, Showpad, whatever it is. And in most cases, you've got 15 to 100 different apps in the organization, and they all share the same content. From a sales point of view, seller point of view, that's a great challenge to find what I need, when I need it, and to find exactly what I need. In most cases, I'm failing to achieve that. So what do? I go back to my comfort zone, which is I'll use whatever I have. And that's like a generic playbook that I use all the time, back to back. And that's the completely opposite of what needs to happen, which is you need to personalize every engagement. From lead gen to closing the deal, you need to personalize every engagement. And it doesn't happen. Why? Because I've got so much content, so much data to consume, to review, to analyze, to explore, to tweak, to customize before my next call. I don't have the time to do that. I don't have the energy to do that.
Yeah.
And now this guy, this new sales enablement guy comes in and says, bells and whistles, I'm the greatest guy in the world and I can create the best content for you guys because I can think as a salesperson. Okay. It doesn't work that way. We don't need more content. We need actionable insights. We need recommendations. And that's something that most salespeople don't have. Unless you use those co-pilots, applications or digital adoption tools that actually tell you what you need to say, per persona, per playbook, per whatever it is. So content doesn't work because consumption is a killer. Time kills deals.
I think I'm with you for the most part. I will agree with you. I don't think we need more content. I think we need the right content. I think if we look at just the landscape of all the content that our sales team could have at their disposal, we don't need more. We need the right assets for our team to then share with our prospects, to share with our clients. We need the right content. And there's a very, very clear distinction there. Nobody needs more content, right? If you look at and wherever that content lives, we don't need more of it. We need the right content. So I would agree with you there.
I couldn't agree more. Well, by the way, what I usually say, we need surgical content. It's a matrix of components, parameters that you need to factor in. Persona, segment, geo, whatever. So you need a very surgical approach to content creation and content consumption.
Yeah, and obviously there's going to be a challenge there too with creating that is can the small to mid-sized staffing firm create that? Now, certainly there are teams like ours that can help with that messaging, with that brand identity and putting all of that together. But I think you hit the nail on the head. it doesn't get done because it's a heavy lift to create that surgical content, as you alluded to. It's a heavy lift to put that together. So I'm going to run away. I'm scared. I'm going to stick to what I know. It's just like role practice. We know we need it, but I'm scared. I'm going to run away and I'm going to stick to what I know.
And besides, if you bring me as a sales enablement, you want me to enable sellers. You don't want me to create content. So if I'm creating content, I'm not enabling the sellers.
Right. Avner, before I let you go, I want to give you the opportunity to share a little bit about yourself, share a little bit about what it is that you do, and of course, give you the floor to talk about the books that you've created.
Thank you. First of all, thank you very much for inviting me over and for putting me on stage. I'll try to be as brief as I can. So I grew up in Israel, relocated 3 times to the US, Venezuela, and France. I studied physics in France. I'm an electrical engineer. Now, the reason I'm sharing this background information is because I'm not the ordinary sales enablement guy. I think as an engineer, and I'm trying to practice engineering when I'm enabling sellers, which means that at every given moment, I'm trying to close the loop. I'm not just pushing information down the throat or asking people, sellers, to consume my content. I'm measuring my contribution and impact on the business. I've been doing that for the last 15 years. When I started, I knew nothing about sales enablement. As I gained experience and expertise, I realized that I'm making many mistakes, but I'm an autodidact, so I try to understand, where do I stumble and why. Long story short, I came up with a new methodology and a new approach to sales enablement. And I think that, long story short, what sales enablement is more than just focusing on sales. What needs to happen is, even if your title is sales enablement, and if you need to focus on sellers and help sellers to improve their performance in order to excel and accomplish your job and meet your goals, you need to think out of the traditional sales boundaries or perimeter. And you need to think, you need to factor in whatever happens before. And that means you need to be proficient in lead generation. You need to be proficient in whatever it takes in order to develop the business, inbound, outbound. You need to be able to create sequences. You need to be able to understand why sequences don't work. And you need, of course, to be familiar with every sales methodology: value selling, Sandler, Challenger, qualification criteria. You need to know those by heart. If time allows, take those certifications, try to think as a seller, try to work in their shoes. And of course, most importantly, you need to close the loop. You need to really be proficient with whatever happens once the deal is closed, which means customer success. Long story short, what Moneyball is, that's my methodology. Project Moneyball, or Moneyball, means that you need to start from end. You need to actually start your process by exploring the book of business in order to really understand what works, what doesn't work. I'll give you a few examples. Let's say that you have an ICP, a persona, but for some reason you feel like it doesn't work based on the conversion rates. What you can do, you can actually apply some regression analysis, look into the book of business, understand, what defines our top contributors, what defines our low contributors, those toxic customers that we need to get rid of. Using some technologies, you can reverse engineer and extract the actionable insights or attributes of what good looks like, and then you feed it back to the top of funnel and sales. So that's an analytical, holistic approach to sales enablement. And that's exactly what I've been doing over the last couple of years, since 2017. I'm working as a full-time employee today, leading go-to-market at a cybersecurity called Ionics. At the same time, I'm running my own show, Project Moneyball, which is a consulting firm. And recently I published 2 books, The Multiplier and Top Sales Enablement Challenges. I'm selling those books globally, helping, startups and mature businesses to build a sales enablement or go-to-market function. And most importantly, build a scalable and repetitive process across the entire customer lifecycle.
Place for someone to get that book if they want to buy it?
Amazon.
I'll be there tomorrow, right? The Amazon effect, my friend. We didn't even talk about the Amazon effect and how it's messed up business and how it's made us adapt to business. I talk about it just about on every show, what I call the Amazon effect of staffing and recruiting, right? Got to be better, faster, stronger in pretty much everything you do. Do you want to land more clients and close more deals in 2025? Haley Marketing is offering big savings to help staffing firms like yours grow. Get $1,000 off targeted marketing campaigns, free tools to track your hottest leads, and no setup fees on services that help your company get found online. Plus, we'll even help you stay in touch with prospects for free. But you need to act fast. These deals end June 30th. You visit bit.ly/BileyOffer to find out more information. Again, that's bit.ly/BileyOffer for more information. All right, let's get back to the show.
Exactly.
Avner, before I let you go, I want to run you through our rapid fire round of 2 questions if you got another second for me.
Come again, sorry?
I want to run you through our rapid fire round if you have 1 more minute for me.
More than one, of course.
Sounds good. Outside of the books you've written, one book that has fundamentally changed your life.
Crossing the Chasm. Completely changed my perspective on sales and go-to-market. I know it may sound a bit corny because it's been around for many years, but it really opened my eyes in terms of why most early stage startups fail. I don't think we have the time to explain it, but I strongly recommend for everyone who's listening to this, get a hold of this book, Crossing the Chasm. And if you can apply even 10% of those insights, you'll be in a better place.
And one piece of advice that you would give to somebody just starting in sales enablement, what would you tell them?
Be open. Think as a salesperson.
He's Avner Baruch. Avner, can't thank you enough for coming on this episode to take the stage and sharing your insights with us, my friend. I genuinely appreciate our time together.
Really appreciate this conversation. Looking forward to the next time.